Yeah, so that was wild, and I'm still not convinced that it happened. I'm still a little shell-shocked that it happened. So Brian Carnes, who I don't know if you've had on the podcast yet, you need to get Brian on the podcast. Great guy, is an Oklahoma native. He's the champ director for the PGA this year at Southern Hills, and he did it last year as well for the senior PGA. And we did a story on Brian. He and I actually worked together in the OSU athletic department when we were in college. He was a few years older than me, and is a great guy and has done really well for himself at the PGA of America. And this was his first big champ to run, to be the tournament director of. And so it's a really special thing to get to do that in your home state. And you know, if you know anything about those champ directors, they're moving every 2 or 3 years. They're moving their whole families to different, he was in Rochester for 3 years, and he was in Lexington for 3 years. And so it's a hectic life to do that. And so for him to be able to do that in Tulsa, in his home state, his wife is from Owasso, and for them to be back for that was really special. And we wanted to do a story on that. So we wrote a story on Brian, and I'm not convinced that helped or hurt our chances to get credentialed for the PGA, but they did give us 2 credentials for the PGA, and man, what an experience that was. It was as good of a week as it was for people watching golf and for Southern Hills and the membership. I think we had the best week of everybody. It was incredible.
Right, because you are you're in your home city, home state, on a golf course that is obviously the best in well, I say obviously, it's definitely 1 and 2, but for the best in the state. But at the same time, you got the world's best coming here, and you would have been there anyway, even if you didn't have a press pass, right? But the fact that you have that pass, you're inside the ropes. Tell me when you get that call. Where are you?
Well, it was
because it's like Christmas Day.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. It's all online. You have to apply online and all of that stuff, and I've applied for a million credentials in my life, with announcing and things like that. But there's always that nervous anticipation. You submit your application, and that you're not a full-time publication, and you're not, your circulation's not as big, but you're local and you're doing local stories, so maybe they'll cut you some slack, And so there was that nervous anticipation, and a week goes by and 2 weeks go by, and it's a month out, and it's like, well, I haven't bought tickets, so maybe I should start looking for tickets. And then you get that confirmation email and it says, hey, you're approved for 2 press passes, which is crazy to me that we got 2, but we're really blessed that happened. And immediately I called Spencer up. I was like, hey, did you get this email? Just making sure that we got the email, because we had to apply individually. Yeah. I couldn't just apply for the for Red Dirt Golf, and so making sure that he got it too, and I wasn't the only one. So that was a surreal moment. And so from there, it was just all green lights. I mean, it was gas the whole way, trying to figure out what sort of content we're going to do. And we know, again, we were talking, off camera. We're not writing about the coverage of the championship. I'm not writing about how, Mito Pereira is in the lead going into Sunday morning. That there's 95% of the other writers in that press room are doing that. We wanted to find different angles. And so, brainstorming what sort of content we're going to do. And, I know you're a hardcore photographer. I'm not. Most of this stuff that we do on our Twitter account is through this thing right here. It's this iPhone. And so, trying to figure out, how are we going to get around that? And just trying to, decide what sort of coverage our audience wants to see, and how are we going to put the Red Dirt spin on it? And so it was a busy month, and that was also when the Golfers Journal guys were in town too. So, it was a busy month trying to do that with a 1-month-old, trying to figure out how I'm going to do 6 days out at Southern Hills with at that time, a 2-month-old and no sleep, and how I'm going to convince my wife to let me do this, And so it was a crazy experience, but it actually happened. And I still, listening to your episode with Reagan Kingsley the other day, it just brought back so many memories, and we're only, a month and a half removed, 2 months removed from it. And it's like, I made so many memories that week. Like, it's going to be hard. I need to write them all down because there's too many to remember. I know that I'm going to forget some, and I don't want to forget anything.
You need to voice note them first, don't you?
Absolutely.
Just to have them, and that's just because it's fresh, and just go day by day, because just walking in the gate for the first day,
oh my gosh,
and you're just you're on eggshells, right?
Yeah.
It's it's kind of like that imposter syndrome. You're like, I don't think I belong here, but I'm going to try not to piss anybody off because I want this to happen again. And you're just like, that's.
And it was so cool too. I mean, Nick Sidorkis is the GM at Southern Hills, and Kerry Cosby's the head golf professional. And Kerry's been so good to us. Basically just kind of opened their doors and allowed us to come in and do what we want content wise. And I've worked with him for 2 or 3 years. He started during COVID. He started what they're calling the Oklahoma Junior Masters. It's a junior amateur tournament out there, and some of the state's best prep golfers. I mean, the first year, Austin Eckroat and Quade Cummins played in it. Yeah. And this year, I mean, there's anybody that is a prep golfer in the state of Oklahoma, is kind of the premier tournament, but they've allowed me to be the first tee announcer for all 3 years of it, which is just an incredible experience. And this year, it's usually late summer at Southern Hills. This year, Kerry convinced the PGA to allow them to bump it up to the week before the championship. And so you've got these, anywhere from 14 to 18-year-old Oklahoma kids out there teeing off in front of those grandstands and stuff. And they really did it big, and it was special. But even, being there with no infrastructure on the grounds, and then being there with all of the infrastructure on the grounds, it's crazy how much they've done. I know Reagan spoke to that. I think he said, 60,000 zip ties on fences or something like that. It was crazy stuff.
Yeah, it was millions of fence line, or millions of feet of fence line. Something the stats were nuts. And even we did it a month after the event, and it was still they were still tearing stuff down. And I'd never been there before. Yeah. So driving in there, obviously you get shelled in when you show up to the event, but then driving up to the gate, I mean, what a drive that is, right?
Absolutely.
And everyone's on the range having a great time.
I've always said, Augusta has Magnolia Lane, Southern Hills has that drive. They need to name that drive.
They do need to name that drive.
It's always, I've always thought that, again, the Masters has its own music. Yeah. The players used to have their own music. They don't use it anymore, but it used to be, I don't know if you remember this, it used to be the theme from The Man from Snowy River.
Okay.
I don't remember the name of the song, but it was one of the songs in The Man from Snowy River. It was a great film, and I've always.
Do you have suggestions for this song?
No, I don't know. Maybe some Jason Boland or something like that. I don't know. We need to put our Oklahoma flair on it, but no, honestly, I mean it's one of the prettiest drives in all of golf anywhere, especially here in Oklahoma. I mean it's really to drive past that guard gate, and it's half mile, 3/4 of a mile up to the clubhouse. And you see most of the golf course. On both sides. You get to see the Corin Crenshaw 9, and then obviously you see Perry Maxwell's championship course, and you just get chills when you're driving up that drive. So it's definitely a special play, and to be on the media shuttle bus driving through those gates with Alan Shipnuck sitting behind me and Sean Martin's in front of me, and I don't get when you're around athletes a lot, you don't get
starstruck.
Yeah, you don't get starstruck. You don't get shell shocked by a lot of guys. The first time that ever happened to me is when I got to announce Clayton Kershaw at Bricktown Ballpark during his rehab. That was really cool. And then the second time was seeing our name, Red Dirt Golf Collective, on a booth in the media center, and I'm next to Brendan Quinn of The Athletic, who I've followed for years. Right. And, just seeing some of those, the Barstool guys were there for a couple of days, and we got to see them, and I don't know, man, it was just wild to see, these are guys who I grew up reading, and seeing their content. And it's cool to see. It was cool to be in the same place with the same status, I guess,
Yeah,
as
100%.
them, you know, and
Yeah.
it felt really good. You know, there was a bit of an imposter syndrome there,
Sure.
Just because, you know, we were probably the only ones there who weren't making money to be there and write it. You know, this is a hobby for us. This
Yeah.
is not this is our passion project.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was very encouraging to see, you know, Sean Martin came up and said, "Hey man, I've read your stuff. I love what you're writing." How cool is that? I mean, that was such a confidence boost. I mean, he writes for the PGA Tour every single stinking week, you know, and to have somebody like that just give us that confidence boost was really cool.